Does the president have a clear-eyed understanding of the nature of his counterpart in Russia and the nature of the regime?
The nature of the Russian regime?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think everybody is pretty clear on that, right? The nature of the Russian regime is one person, isn't it? I mean, so I think you have an autocratic regime and an individual who's done an extraordinarily effective job at consolidating power. And we're talking obviously about the annexation of Crimea, the invasion of Ukraine here.
The attack on our election.
But also the attack on our election, the very sophisticated campaign of subversion and disinformation and propaganda that is ongoing every day.
That was part of Hugh Hewitt's exclusive interview here on MSNBC with National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. He's the latest Trump official whose future is reportedly in question. Or at least that's what Steve Bannon and a lot of Russian bots on Twitter would want you to think. With us now, we've got senior reporter for Business Insider, Natasha Bertrand, who covers national security and foreign policy. Also, the professor of political science and the director of the Institute for International Studies at Stanford University, former ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul. Mr. Ambassador, let's begin with you. It certainly sounds like General McMaster has the traditional American line against Vladimir Putin and the Russians. What do you think?
I thought that snippet from HR was the most concise and accurate statement of Vladimir Putin and his foreign policy intentions. It was fantastic. Analytically, it's exactly right from my point of view. What I don't know, of course, is whether the president shares his National Security Advisor's assessment of Russian intentions.
You've got to believe, Natasha, you've got H.R. McMaster saying that. You've got the Vice President of the United States saying that. You've got a lot of other officials, Nikki Haley at the UN saying that. It certainly sounds like that's the official position of the Trump administration, even if the president wants to say it. And yet you reported that the long knives are out for General McMaster. Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, judging from that snippet that we just saw from his interview with Hugh Hewitt, it's really no wonder that the, Russian bots and trolls are kind of out to get him. It's the same with the nationalist wing in the White House. I mean, you have the Bannon wing, who is really, not happy with McMaster, especially after the firings of Derek Harvey and Rich Higgins. So this is just like, it's an ideological battle that we're seeing play out in the White House, and it's really unclear. I mean, I think that the nationalist wing has kind of the competitive advantage at the moment, just because Trump has said in the past that, he kind of finds H.R. McMaster's, strategy annoying in terms of how he does the briefings. He doesn't really like how he talks to him. Sometimes he feels like it's a bit condescending. We'll see how John Kelly deals with all of this. His presence in the White House definitely gives McMaster more of a chance at surviving, but we'll see.
And obviously this weekend, Mr. Ambassador, Donald Trump came out and reiterated his support for General McMaster and talked about how valuable he was to the foreign policy team. And most importantly, this past week, the president allowed General McMaster to do something, or actually allowed John Kelly to do something that he had not allowed General McMaster to do before, and that is get rid of a couple of people in the National Security Council who were unhelpful to the cause.
Yeah, and I just have to applaud that. I mean, I worked at the National Security Council for 3 years. You cannot have people on that staff. It's a small staff. The senior staff is small, that don't support the views of the National Security Advisor. And I would just say it would be a shock and a real crisis if the president now turned on H.R. McMaster and fired him because of some quote-unquote nationalists who think that they know foreign policy better. This is a strong team right now with the right views, I think, on a lot of foreign policy issues at a really dangerous time in American foreign policy. Right. We need the best and the brightest running the show right now.
Mr. Ambassador, you, of course, have been very critical of Donald Trump on foreign policy for a very long time. But I did notice this weekend you rightly saluted him for a 15-0 vote against North Korea on sanctions. That was quite an accomplishment. Congratulations, real Donald Trump. This vote is a genuine foreign policy achievement, which it certainly was. But you just also said something I think pretty significant. With H.R. McMaster where he is, with John Kelly where he is, with General Mattis where he is, this president, for all of the problems that you and I agree on, but this president right now has a pretty damn strong foreign policy team assembled, does he not?
Yes, I agree. And, you know, let's be clear, UN Security Council resolutions don't solve military problems, but they're a good step in the right direction. It's hard to get the Russians and Chinese to sign up to Security Council resolutions on anything, let alone North Korea, so it's an achievement. And Ambassador Haley should get credit, too. As you were talking before the break, I think she's done a very commendable job as the UN ambassador. I still worry about the commander-in-chief. I want to be clear about that. I still worry that he's not in alignment with his team. But to mess with this team right now, I think would send a very bad signal to our allies, both in Europe and Asia. He needs to keep this team in place.
Natasha, well, Nicole, if you look at what I can expand this out. You look at what John Kelly said. You look at what General McMaster said about the Russians. You look at what Nikki Haley said about the Russians. You look at what Vice President Pence said about the Russians on the Russians' doorstep. If Donald Trump didn't want them saying that, they wouldn't be saying that. And so it's interesting, everybody in the administration is saying that. Donald Trump is staying quiet, though, obviously, and that's maddening to a lot of us about Vladimir Putin and a lot of steps he's taken. But that said, at some point, we've got to go back to Halpern's favorite quote of Bill Clinton: if a turtle is on top of a fence post, it didn't get there by accident.
Yeah, but then why didn't he say anything? I mean, he signed the Russian sanctions with 2 statements, not 1, which is the norm, and reiterated his rage with Congress. And it was John McCain that continues to sort of keep him honest and, frankly, rebuke him. It was John McCain over the weekend who pointed out that all the talk about 2020 is because he's so weak. And I think, Natasha, your reporting about McMaster is so interesting because Steve Bannon doesn't seem like merely a rogue agent inside the West Wing. And I'm guessing that if he didn't feel that he had some cover, either spoken or perceived, from the President of the United States, he wouldn't be knifing McMaster.
Well, he has the full weight of Breitbart behind him, right? I mean, he has, you know, he claims to be very in touch with Trump's base. So I think that's why he feels like he's so safe in the White House, because he is in touch with this kind of nationalist base that Trump has for support. That's, if anything, you know, I mean, it might be eroding a tiny bit, but if anything, it's remained fairly strong. I mean, that's the 34% that we've seen remain steady. But I would also just note that it's not necessarily, you know, a loyalty thing with regard to McMaster, because McMaster has gone to bat for Trump in the past. I mean, he, you know, when Trump had that Oval Office meeting with the Russians.
Right, he staked his credibility on the line when Trump told the Russians about
the Israeli intelligence. Right, and then he went to bat for Kushner, Jared Kushner, also when, you know, it was reported that Kushner had this meeting with the Russian ambassador and offered to set up a back channel. McMaster said, well, you know, I don't see anything necessarily wrong with that. So this isn't necessarily something that has to do with loyalty. I think that makes it clear that this is purely ideological.
And I'm not so sure also that Steve Bannon's not striking out, because Steve Bannon's position's been dramatically weakened over the past 5-6 days. Ambassador McFaul, I'm very concerned for your well-being on Twitter. You have said 2 positive things about Donald Trump this morning, so I'm going to throw you a softball on a subject that you can be deeply critical of the president and still walk out of the studio in one piece. You were talking about Trump TV, something we discussed at the top of the show, at the top of this hour. And you said, wow, it feels eerily like so many state-owned channels I've watched in other countries. Tell us about that concern.
Well, Jill, probably more than most Americans. I've watched a lot of state-run TV. I went to the Soviet Union for the first time in 1983. It's my job to follow that country and many other communist countries. And it just was a very weird, eerie thing to praise the president. The president does no wrong. The president is in charge of all good events that happen in the country. You know, very strange kind of way. And it just makes me wonder who actually looks at that and listens to that and thinks, oh, I agree with that. And I find it somewhat disturbing that we now have a president with his own television station. I thought that was what the White House communications was for. But these are new times, so we use new technologies.
These are new times, Natasha. What's the reaction that you've heard from Trump TV?
Who's paying for it? I mean, who's compensating Kayleigh McEnany for going on this show and kind of just, you know, spouting this pro-Trump? I mean, I would argue propaganda. I mean, it's really kind of disturbing. That's what I've been hearing from a lot of people who don't really know where it came from, who don't really know, you know, where it's being filmed, how it's being, you know, organized. It's just kind of it came out of left field. So.
All right. Well, and you know, that's a question actually that Mika asked, was asking, who's paying for this? I'm not sure who's paying for it. I think most likely the campaign, but that's something for us all to check and see. Ambassador Michael McFaul, thank you so much for being with us. And
sure.
Thank you, Natasha Bertrand, as well. Greatly appreciate it. Yeah, I hope you're all right, Mr. Ambassador. Be safe out there.
Okay.
And after a couple of positive comments. Now, thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.